Good evening, friends. Welcome to another episode of Second Age Amazon TV Show podcast. My name is Strider. I'm going to be your host tonight, and with me are Kyle. Hello, Kyle, man. How are you?
Hey, man. How's it going? Great to actually see you this time. This is nice.
Yeah, great to meet you.
Likewise.
And of course, Lakitia.
Hey, everybody. Great to be back. Great to see everybody.
Yeah, perfect to see each other in person. That's great news. Maybe a bit of a surprise for everybody here.
Yes.
So it's also great news that we have some really interesting things to discuss tonight. So shall we get started?
Let's
Absolutely.
do it.
Take it away.
Okay. So the first exclusive that we have for tonight is that Tristan Gravel will play Pharazôn in the upcoming Amazon The Lord of the Rings TV series. Tristan Gravel is said to be the best actor on the Numenor sets. So, what do we think about this? Kyle, what would you say?
Super cool. I had done some concept artwork quite a few months back, and I chose to use Tristan as my Pharazôn model, not knowing who was going to be playing Pharazôn at the time, or even if Pharazôn was going to be in the series at the time.
Oh, that's awesome.
To me, he was the only one I got right, so this is fine. To me, when I saw him, he immediately struck me, I guess maybe mostly out of the available cast, he immediately struck me as Pharazôn, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing him portray that character.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know Tristan as an actor. I think I've only seen him in one show. But it's really, really cool to finally be getting, these faces to go along with the characters. And it's really, really reassuring to hear that his performance is, being praised on the set. I think, hopefully this is going to be quite a complex role. So I'd really like a really good character actor to take it on. And, presumably we're going to be seeing some very, very intense scenes. So, I think he's up for the job, and I think this is really exciting. What do you think, Strider?
I would agree with that. I also haven't seen him before. I don't think I've seen him in anything particular, but I'm just very happy that they say that he's the best actor on the Numenor sets, because he's the guy in Numenor, at least in the beginning of the show, he has to be the main guy, so he has to be the best guy, So
exactly.
I think he's probably one of the probably top 5 characters. They need to be perfectly cast,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think this is amazing news.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I agree. Like you said, his performance should be one of the most powerful ones, and I think he's gonna have some really juicy stuff to do and to deal with. So it's really good to hear that the actor who's taken it on is praised for what he's been doing.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's going to be a lot of that political upheaval, and Pharazôn's a character that very much drives the plot of the late Second Age, and we want to see some of that politics. And speaking of that brings us to our next point, which is that he's described as imperious, arrogant, not particularly likable, but also very intelligent and the consummate politician. He has a graying beard, shoulder-length hair, and always seemed to be dressed in a blue and gold, which are the colors of Numenor.
That's really, just terrible to hear. I kind of hope that our Pharazôn would be given the chance to shine like the altruistic hero that he is. But in all seriousness, I think, they're really, it really sounds to me as though they're making him out to be, if not a villain, then certainly an antagonistic or somewhat grey character from the very get-go. And I'll just say what I've been saying all along, that I really hope that his character is fleshed out as a very complex and nuanced character rather than just a flat-out villain. And I wouldn't mind him being a bit antagonistic, but I do hope that they avoid the archetype. And I just wanted to say something else about the description of his robes and his colors. I mean, I'm sure he'll be plenty pretty and everything, and but I'm really, really digging the whole blue and gold color palette for Numenor. I think it really does evoke a certain feeling of real world antiquity, which I really like. And I also noticed that, you know, these colors are this is sort of a continuity break with the existing trilogy, where I think the Gondorian soldiers were mostly dressed in, you know, 50 Shades of Grey, basically, and just like grey and black and stuff. So of course this is Numenor, this is not Gondor, but still I think it's interesting to see that they're not going to be, you know, establishing such strict continuity as we maybe thought they would.
Well, I would agree with that. We need more. We need more colors. I would definitely agree with that. But perhaps just popped to my head now, to my mind, that maybe the colors that we see in Gondor and that we would have seen in Arnor, probably, if somehow Peter Jackson had the chance to cover that. Maybe those colors could be tied to the family of Elendil, perhaps. Maybe not necessarily the royal one. So maybe.
Wow, that's a really good observation. I didn't even consider that. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
But I also would agree with what you guys said. He should not be the stereotype of a villain. Like, we need him to be in like 4D, not 3D, 4D, 5D, however many Ds they can put there. Like, he needs to be a multi-dimensional character. So even though he should be, like, it makes sense for him to be arrogant, perhaps not particularly likable, they need to give him also some redeeming traits, just to give them like the charm. You know, he has to be the one you like to hate, at least.
That's a good point. I would also just like to mention that I think in the leaked character sheet, it mentioned that he had a son, right? Am I correct in saying that? Yeah. So I mean,
I believe so.
Maybe that's where you're going to see some of this redeeming stuff, right?
Okay. Yeah. That's
okay. That makes sense.
That's a good point. Yeah, I could see that happening. Okay. Should we continue on?
Let's do it.
Yeah. Do you want to do this one, Lakitia?
Yeah, sure. All right. So the next reveal is in season 1, Pharazôn is going to be Miriel's chief advisor and will unexpectedly defer to Miriel's seniority. But for the most part, he acted like he was in charge, but not king. Any thoughts?
Kyle, what do you think? Kyle, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. We're assuming that we're still in the time of Palantir, right? So to have Pharazôn kind of fill this role during this time, I think makes sense. And yeah, it's interesting to see that it'll be interesting to see the power dynamic between the two during this time.
I think I mentioned that perhaps in one of the 2 previous episodes I was in. I cannot wait to see the politics in Middle-earth. Like, that's one aspect that we really didn't see. Like, we saw bits and pieces with Grima, if we can call that like actual politics, you know, and maybe like with Denethor, like those couple of lines about Aragorn, but not real politics. And this, honestly, I think this is perhaps, of course, like the visual. I want to see other parts of Middle-earth as everybody else, but I think like the main aspect of this TV show that I'm really looking forward to is the politics. Okay. So for me, this is great news. Can't wait to see that.
Yeah, I agree.
For me, I don't think. Yeah, sorry.
No, I just agree. That's all.
Okay. Yeah. I'm like, I hope this show doesn't get to be too politicky, you know.
Of course.
I think it will be much more so than the previous Middle-earth media that we've seen. But I sort of hope it's not going to get into the nitty-gritty of the political drama with everybody's a great character, etc. But of course, it makes sense. It makes sense for the setting. It makes sense for what's going on in Numenor. After all, we know that there is going to be a lot of political drama. And one thing I noticed from this latest reveal is that the antagonistic strike seems to continue here. So this does sound to me as though there will be some strife between the two from the get-go, between Tarmiriel and Pharazôn. And that kind of makes me wonder, how will they tackle their eventual marriage? Could maybe his coup perhaps just be portrayed as a full-on takeover where they dethrone Miriel altogether? I think of a forced marriage in this day and age, it's kind of really hard to tackle, and I hope they do it really sensitively if they do it. But yeah, this kind of made me wonder, maybe he's planning on just removing her altogether.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with that. I kind of, at this point, I envision it more as a military coup than a forced marriage coup. But that's a really good point.
Yeah, same. Yeah. So I'm wondering what's gonna happen to her.
Yeah.
Well, there's always an option of maybe like a combo, like the military coup, and then he just has all the cards and forces her to legally marry him, so he has the claim, or however they may deal with that. Without the forcing part, really. So I think these things were done basically marriage just to get the stamp of the validity. So there's a lot of potential and many ways it can go. So yeah, hopefully they will tackle it with delicacy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and of course, that's something that happens in the lore. And if they want to follow the lore, they want to be, loyal. They of course will include it. I just hope it's done very tactfully, and I'm sure it will. We have a wonderful team of writers, so I'm sure it's gonna be done with a lot of, with a lot of feeling. But I'm just curious as to how exactly they're gonna deal with it. That's all.
Agreed, definitely. So shall we move to the next reveal?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'm going to read this one. So at some point in season 1, Pharazôn will give an amazing speech to the Numenor crowd about all the great things that Numenor has accomplished in the past, and how the Numenorian people shouldn't be afraid of the elves. Context for this scene is that there is a mob of elf haters in Numenor causing riots, but Pharazôn calms the tensions, and his speech is said to be motivational and inspiring. So I think this ties in pretty well with the last few things that we mentioned. Like we already see here, perhaps him putting himself in the position of being in charge. How does it feel to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. It does sound like, he's trying to gain some power. There's also, something that we have heard before, this sort of elf phobia that looks like it's taking place taking root in the Numenorian society. Again, as with the marriage to Miriel, I'm a bit cautious about how they'll tackle it. But it does seem like they're building him up to be this cunning, charismatic politician. Motivational, inspiring speech. I think that signifies a lot of political charisma. So like our friend Hen would say, they're certainly building up the Machiavellian aspect of the Numenorian politics. And I think that's going to be really interesting to watch. And I also think, it does seem like he's really able to sway the public opinion, which I suppose is going to come in pretty handy later on when, once the wheels of the coup start moving.
I think so too. And I think it's also going to be an interesting aspect of him to see how to see the balance between his passion
Mhm.
towards the goals that he will develop eventually through various influences. Um, so the balance between those passions and this political mind, like how he will balance those two motivational forces, because it feels like those are going to be like two driving forces behind him.
Yeah, I think it's a strong insight into how his personality drives the state of the Kingsmen, basically, and empowers them, and while he's empowering himself at the same time, right?
Agreed. Though, like, we haven't seen really elf haters so far. I mean, they touch upon it a bit more in the Lord of the Rings books. There's like more doubt towards the elves, but in the movies, it wasn't so apparent. Like, I actually think the only negative comment was, and it's not even a negative comment, like, what do a man, a dwarf, and an elf do in Riddermark? Like,
Well,
that's, I think, as far as it gets.
There's Boromir, who is pretty unwilling to go into Lothlorien, so I think he represents the more cautious aspects of the human societies. Yeah.
I know that the dynamic between Gimli and Legolas, or the dwarves and the elves in general, is more of a comedic thing in the movies. So this will be very different from that, I think.
Yeah, and especially like this Numenor nation, they are as good as it gets when it comes to the race of men, and then to see them change in such a way, like, that's going to be very interesting. Definitely, something new for all of us to see. So but it can also be a potential like a barrier, perhaps, for them. They will also have to do this carefully, you know. Like, I mean, they have to do everything carefully.
Yeah.
Basically, but this also has to be done with tact.
Yeah, I agree.
That's why I'm a bit, sad that we're just probably gonna see the late second age Numenor. It would be really, really interesting to see this whole situation, the society get built up to be the peak of human civilization, and then start seeing the cracks, start seeing the doubt whether, the Valar are really there to aid the humans and whether their situation is fair or not. It would be really interesting to see this happen gradually. But given the fact that, we already have people like Pharazôn, I don't think we'll see too much of that. And if already the elf phobia appears in season 1, that for sure they're not gonna be, those uber humans that they were prior to that in the second age. So I'm a bit sad about that.
Yeah, I agree, but I get why a certain period has to be focused on, because, you can go all the way back to the beginning and tell a 20 season series, right? Like, there's only so much they can do. I think we'll get a lot of that in dialogue and in flashbacks and things like that. But our next reveal actually might have some insight into how the elves and the men, humans, are interacting with each other, specifically. In the scene where Galadriel is introduced to him and Miriel, he has absolutely no hesitation in talking down to Galadriel despite her status, said to be similar to Denethor to Gandalf seen in The Return of the King.
He just sounds like such a darling, doesn't he? Well, for me, it's certainly going to be something new to see Galadriel being treated with anything other than respect. Like we mentioned before, we did have some, hesitance in Boromir's case, but that was just more like cautious awe or something. But I also find it really interesting that Pharazôn will be trying to soothe the negative sentiments towards the elves at some point in this season. And then at the same time, like in another scene, he's going to be talking down to Galadriel. So this really makes me... It really does sound a lot like Denethor. And it really makes me think that this is all just political play for him. You know, these aren't necessarily his own opinions. At least when he's trying to soothe the crowds and everything. You know, maybe he's just doing that for political goals.
Yeah, maybe it could be what I mentioned before, perhaps that balance of passion and politics. So in one scene, he's doing the job of the politician.
Yeah.
And then maybe in this scene, the passion really, like, you know, his jealousy of certain things maybe comes to the surface and he cannot help himself, so he does that. So maybe that's going to be one of those scenes where he really comes to his own.
I hope you're right, because that would make him a more fully fleshed out character and, you know, more nuanced and everything. So I think that sounds really good.
I'm really interested to see how Galadriel will react to that, and then how he'll react to Galadriel's reaction. I think that'll be an interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Galadriel is at this point still super old. Like, this is just like, what, 3,000 years?
Never call a lady
Around 3,000
old.
years. Okay. Why? Can I say that?
Yes,
So,
yes.
The 3,000 years that passed to the before the Lord of the Rings story, it's not really too much for her. So at this point, she's already top tier wise, one of the wisest person we're going to see in this show. Like, that's not even a discussion. So it's
She's leveled up all the way.
Yeah, like there's not really much experience she needs after this at this point. So would you like to see her lose her cool, or do you see her just like really keeping it, like, you know, calm and collected?
I think
or like some, you know, banter or something like that.
Yeah, I think the whole reason for her to be in Numenor to begin with is diplomacy, and I think that she'll only accomplish that by keeping a cool demeanor and explaining her position.
Yeah, I think so. And it will be really, really super interesting to see, now that we have her paired up with a fiery, you know, untamed Pharazôn. And we'll, like we've mentioned in previous shows, we'll already have her teamed up with Eric, which is another cantankerous character. So apparently she's going to be dealing with a lot of hotheads this season, which I feel is really, really interesting. I mean, I hope, you know, she loses her cool at some point too. Not in the same way that these guys do, but I sure hope that it's not just going to be, you know, the turning around for like half a minute or something. So I really hope this is going to give her some really juicy stuff to work with as well.
I hope so too. But at the same time, you have to think about the dynamic between elves and men in Numenor at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I would just add, or rather, I agree. So far, what we've seen in the two trilogies, we've seen her as this, as you say, like a gloriously turning around, pronouncing everything, you know, with calm and like gravitas and all that. So it would be really, really satisfying to see her lose her cool, in a pun intended, in a cool way. So not just to lose it, but like to really play to that, to the strength of her character, but to actually, you know, like be more vocal, do something more attacking or like direct. So I definitely agree with that. We need this dimension of Galadriel.
Because, you know, she is a quite a fiery person. I mean, she's really determined and really ambitious and everything. And we already see, like, I have a strong preference for Gandalf the Grey, because, you know, I mean, Gandalf the White does get a little bit impatient with Pippin as well, but Gandalf the Grey is the one who's like, he can be a little bit volatile at times. And I'm thinking, I mean, of course, I want Galadriel to keep her character and everything, but I for sure want to give her some depth and some really varied, unexpected responses as well. And I think this could be a really cool opportunity, and just, just to see her take down Pharazôn.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think elves have a particular demeanor, but that in no way infers that they're flat. And I think a lot of Peter Jackson's elves were quite flat.
Yeah. Very true.
I mean, to be fair, they are pretty much like that in the books, like in the Lord of the Rings, the books. That's how they are.
Yeah.
There's that meme, like in the Lord of the Rings, they also like calm and collected. Then Silmarillion is like the knives and fire.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
but it
and
would
this
be
is like
great.
kind of halfway through.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But I think it would have been great, if the Silmarillion elves informed on the elves that Jackson also chose to, portray in his trilogies. And I think, up to a degree they do, because in the books, Elrond is much more reserved than everything, and in the films he is directly trying to persuade Arwen to sail away, and just he told Aragorn basically to just give her up and stuff. He's a bit manipulative as well. So I think that aspect has been brought into the films a little bit, but I for sure hope that this series can take it a lot further than that. And I think it will, because we'll see more elf-on-elf interaction. We'll see, them being involved in military aspects of the story as well. So I think there's a lot of potential for that as well.
Yeah, for sure. We're gonna see more of the culture, just in general, right? Like, we don't get a lot of men culture or dwarven culture or elven culture in any of the movies. So that'll be a dynamic on top of all of that for sure.
Yeah, that's something I'm looking forward to the most.
Me too. Yeah.
Should we move on to the next bit?
Yeah, if you will, you can read the next one.
Yes, I'll do the honors. So our next reveal is that for some reason, the Númenórean crowd in the throne room turns on Pharazôn and chases him out of the throne room. What do you guys feel about that?
I'm not sure what to think about this. This could be like perhaps his low point of his character arc in the first season, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe he oversteps and then he has to withdraw and then think again, like do some strategizing. So, but I wonder what could be the reason for him to. What would be the reason for the crowd to react like this?
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas?
That's what I'm wondering as well, and it almost seems contrary to everything else we've been talking about so far. So I wonder if this is maybe like, he's trying to remain diplomatic, but there's this, groundswell of this groundswell movement, basically, of the King's Men, and maybe this is what makes him turn on a dime and decide this is where he needs to take his power, kind of thing.
Yeah, and it kind of makes me wonder what sort of a crowd is it that chases him out? Is this the nobles? Is this the Queen's people, the faithful?
That's a good point too.
I mean, just imagining him jog out of the throne room makes for a very fun visual, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. But for me, it does seem as though his, ascent to the throne is not going to be quite as straightforward as he might have hoped. So perhaps, he tries to win over the loyalties of the people with politicking, but he's unsuccessful, and then stages like a military coup. So I think that's going to be really interesting to see, and for me, for sure, it would make for a much more interesting story if it wasn't just a steady climb, but does get turned back, and then we maybe see him get more and more radical in his in the way he deals with these things. So yeah, that's great.
We need to see him earn the rise. So I agree with that. But it's going to be interesting to see him running out of the throne room. But maybe, just maybe, speculating, of course, maybe this ties in with the previous scene. Maybe he, or not the previous scene, the previous reveal that we discussed, or one of the others. So maybe like the conflict with Muriel, or with Galadriel, or with both, perhaps. Maybe that could be something that could lead to this outcome.
Yeah, possibly.
So to continue with this story, the next reveal is during a heated council scene in the throne room on what to do with the elves, Pharazôn mentions many past Númenórean kings and name drops Ar Adunakor, who banned the speaking of Quenya in Númenor. So how does this sound to you guys?
Well, to me, I think this is the stuff that's gonna make the hardcore fans really happy. Because I really love that they're digging deep into the Legendarium, and it seems as though they're taking the lore very seriously, which is always good news as far as I'm concerned. And it sort of reminds me of Jackson's film trilogy, especially the first one. You know, I believe one of the reasons why these films convinced so many people who weren't originally fantasy fans and don't really like fantasy was how seriously the filmmakers took the whole world building. And, you know, they went to great pains to establish Middle Earth and to ensure that its lore is just integrated into the whole world that they're portraying. So we've had like name drops of certain first and second age characters. We hear the characters speaking Quenya and Sindarin and, you know, Kuzul and Rohirrik and everything, and we saw stuff like the ruins of Eregion, and I think this is the stuff that makes the world really rich. And I think these details like these make for a really, you know, just juicy viewing experience. So knowing that Amazon is paying attention to this stuff makes me really excited.
Yeah, I agree. I think lore drops on their own are very cool, but I wonder how this will be woven into the story, and I wonder if Adunakor is like almost like a political hero of Pharazôn's or something, you know, being the first to take a blasphemous name essentially, and kind of get that ball rolling, and to see it kind of go where it's going with Pharazôn, I think will be really interesting to tie those two histories together.
Yeah.
Could this also, again, speculating, but these all could fit potentially together? Like all of these reveals some of them probably fit together.
Yeah.
So maybe this could be the speech that chases him out of the throne room, or, you know, maybe it's one of those. Like if he raises the name of Ar Adunakor in a wrong crowd, that could lead to a conflict. If he does that with the faithful, and, you know, maybe he doesn't have the numerical advantage in that situation, that would definitely lead to him leaving the throne room. Okay.
Yeah, that's a cool observation. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So we have one more, let's say, bonus news. So would one of you like to read it?
Kyle, do you want to go ahead?
I actually don't have it up. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so we have exclusive scene description, which includes Galadriel and Pharazôn. Apparently, a scene took place in the Númenórean throne room, but the room had been converted into a grand dining area alongside a big round stone table surrounded by stone benches, very fancy, and food is on the table with servants walking around and nobles sitting around the table talking. And apparently Pharazôn addresses the nobles, and Galadriel is attending this feast, but she's sitting at a small side table, not the main round table. And Pharazôn ends up getting into a small argument with her about some stuff, and this becomes quite a heated exchange for everyone in the room. Any opinions?
Sounds very dramatic.
Yeah.
Definitely. But what could be like? Okay, can we try to figure this out, or like give some sort of idea? What could it be that would make the whole room explode into a heat exchange, and it starts with elves and men? Something. What could conflict them? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Not really.
Because
I mean,
it has to be
yeah.
something really, really interesting. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
the supreme culture, like maybe I don't know, Numenorians setting up more and more colonies, perhaps.
Perhaps that my
Like-
my thought. What this just popped into my head, but maybe it could be something like, we've speculated that perhaps Galadriel is in Numenor in order to ask the Numenorians for aid against Sauron, and maybe this could be something like, Pharazôn being a bit sassy and being just like, okay, we came to help you with the War of Elves and Sauron at the middle of the Second Age. You really weren't able to defend him. I mean, defeat him all on your own. So, why do we have to come save your skin again? What's in it for us? Just something that popped into my head.
Another thing I'll say is it would be cool if this feast was like tied into one of the 3 prayers or something like that. If they really want to go into the lore, that would be a cool way to do it.
Ah, that would be super cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Speaking of showing us more of the culture, that could work.
Yeah.
Well, that would be really. Also, yeah. Another thing that can really give the depth to this whole setting. Doing more of the religious things, like seeing a couple of those ceremonies.
Yeah.
Like on the mountain, Meneltarma.
Yes, please. I really want to see that, and that's gonna be
there,
that's gonna be so interesting. Once Sauron arrives and this all turns into the Melkor worshipping stuff. So I really hope they establish what the rituals of the Numenorians were prior to Sauron's arrival.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a really, really cool way to do that, just to show the whole ceremonies and perhaps a festival or two. I'm a sucker for those kind of things.
Definitely.
I really want them to dig deep into the Numenorian culture, which inevitably is going to mean coming up with some stuff that wasn't there in the lore. But I have faith in them.
Me too.
Yeah, but this is that is a great way to show us. So first they show us the bright spectacle of being faithful and having those regular religious ceremonies that we would expect from Numenor in this point in time, and then as the show goes on, when things start to happen, we can then more easily see the decline. And well, Meneltarma is definitely can you help me? A place.
It's a big visual.
That could be really, really striking. Like that has so much. Like I can already see like a new wallpaper with that and the sun setting in the west, and something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I agree.
Maybe like a foil to Mount Doom or something like that.
Ooh,
Yeah.
That would work.
There's so many mountains in this series, like the and most of the important ones are just, standalones.
I wonder.
The Lonely Mountain.
That makes me wonder if we'll see the eagles and have them involved.
Oh, Manwë's eagles.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be super cool. That would be really cool. And one thing I really, really, really hope to see in Numenor is, their forests. Tolkien went to, painstaking details about, especially in the Unfinished Tales, about the forests in Numenor, and how, the melon trees also came from there. So I really hope to see some characters just, riding through the woods.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, we can see the white tree also there.
Oh,
yes,
we certainly will.
Yeah, I think we will
and
see
maybe
that.
more of them.
Yeah.
Not just one.
that's going to be a big part of Isildur's timeline. I think. Yeah.
I think this could be something that his story, at least in maybe not even in season 1, but maybe in one of the later seasons, could be centered around. I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah.
Really fun.
Yes.
It's a heist.
Yeah.
Who doesn't like a heist story?
Yeah, and of course,
Exactly.
he nearly loses his life, so
Yeah.
that'll be interesting
It's
to
dramatic.
see. Yeah.
Maybe we will also see some elvish gifts. Perhaps that could also be an interesting tidbit that could fit in one of the scenes, like giving some sort of an artifact,
That would be.
or maybe like giving something to Elendil and his family, or to Tarmiriel and some
for
maybe
sure.
sort of jealousy or disrespect towards perhaps Farazon for not getting something, or
Yeah.
I think it will be interesting also to see that we've already established that Galadriel is going to be visiting Numenor. So I really hope we see a sort of friendship develop between her and maybe, some of the faithful. Like, I could really see them building up the whole, maybe not exactly friendship, but at least some sort of respect and some sort of, fuzzy feelings between her and Elendil's family. So,
yeah, and even with Muriel, I think too, right? I think.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Are we
So we discussed a lot of interesting things definitely tonight. So do you have any final comments? Any theories? Or did we cover everything?
I think we covered everything. My parting thoughts, if something like that exists, are I really hope that they do a great job with characterization. I really hope that Tristan Gravel does a magnificent job portraying Farazon, which I'm pretty certain he will in any case. And I'm really interested to see how he's going to be playing off of Miriel and the relationship he's going to have with Elendil. I think all these things can make for some really appealing drama.
Yeah, I agree. If we're not going to get a series around the forging and around, the War of the Elves and Sauron, this is the stuff I want to see for sure.
Yes. Well, ouch.
Yeah. Maybe someday.
Someday, yeah, for sure.
Hopefully, I mean, if this goes well, look at what's happening with Game of Thrones.
Yeah, exactly.
The world of Westeros.
Yeah.
So all the possible fingers crossed that this goes well, and that we keep getting more and more. Like I'm just gonna keep doing this for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be sorry for that. So,
No, I'm with you. Solidarity on that one.
Okay, excellent. Well, guys, it was a pleasure to talk with you tonight, as usual. I had a lot of fun, and so shall we wrap this up?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and see you next week.
Indeed.
Yeah. See you next week, guys. Goodbye.